Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode. I'm so excited to have our guest Chelynn on the podcast today. Thank you, Chelynn, so much for being here.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
So, we're going to dive right into it. And I'd love to hear, when was the first time you felt something on a soul level?
Hmm. Yeah, I had thought about that, and without overthinking, it brought me back to a memory. I was probably about 9 or 10, and I have three other siblings, and we lived at that time in a fairly small house, and I shared a room with two of my sisters. And so, as a child, I didn't have a lot of space on my own. And I was naturally a very curious child, like most of us are. And I remember going into the bathroom because that was the one place where I could kind of be on my own. And I was looking out the window, and I was just following my curiosity a little bit, looking out the window, looking at the backyard, seeing all these trees in the distance, and just having a sort of like yearning for more, and sort of stepping into what is this mystery? What is all of this? And I remember saying to myself, if there's something out there, if there's something that's listening, that's out there, can you send me a sign? I said this at like 9 years old. And then like the wind started picking up.
Wow.
It's just like all of these winds. And I just remember just being just very, very blissful and just very happy and sort of excited for whatever that was, And so that question brought me back to that memory of first starting to listen and paying attention, to what's in the moment.
I love that so much. And it's so funny that as children, we kind of have these existential moments where it just feels like, I can't believe I asked that as a kid or I was even thinking about that. But it's almost like, if we could remember, like, we're pretty close to our last reincarnation. Like we're like fresh from our soul, and we're connected to that piece of us. And it's so great that you have that memory that's just instilled in you forever.
Yeah, it's natural for us to be curious. Yeah. And sort of amazed. Yeah.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
What really drew you into this whole world of Ayurveda and healing?
So I would say the clearest answer for that would be through my twin sister. So we happen to be the kind of twins that have a lot of similarities, interested in a lot of the same things. And we grew up as athletes, runners in particular. And we were both quite independent in our nature. We're both artists as well. And she had decided after high school to study massage therapy. And we had somewhat of a slightly competitive nature towards each other for a time. And I was very intrigued with what she was doing. I liked that it was something to do with health, and it was helping other people, and it wasn't just being stationary at a desk. Just for my personality, that's something that was always difficult, to be completely stationary physically. And she would practice on me, and I thought it was really interesting, like how you can help people, by working on their body, and it seemed very simple but helpful. And so we talked about it, and she put her competitive nature aside and encouraged me to also study massage therapy. So she was a little bit ahead of me with that. And so after she became a massage therapist, she started taking extra classes that was studying different types of body therapy under the realm of Ayurveda. And so she went to a school in Rhode Island, because I'm over on the East Coast. I think you're in California. So she studied with this woman who studied with Dr. Lad, and she learned one of the body therapies, Shila Abhyanga, which is just a hot stone massage, and then learned a little bit about the fundamental principles of Ayurveda. And so my sister was so inspired that she immediately came to me with it and said, you have to take this class. It's about this beautiful traditional science from India. It involves all of the senses. As artists, we can relate to this. It's very poetic, but also it's a science as well. So I took the class, and then also fell in love. And then just from then on out, continued to take different courses with different teachers, studied with Dr. Lod and with various other teachers, mostly learning body therapies and then Nadi Pariksha, which is the pulse diagnosis, before deciding to then really dive in and learn the theories and the clinical side through the California College of Ayurveda, in a nutshell.
Yeah, a nutshell for sure. I love that. And before I guess we go deeper into Ayurveda and healing, I'm so interested in your artist side. Like, what kind of art do you make and like to create?
Mm-hmm. So I first studied photography. So in high school, I was doing photography all the time. I learned photography when it was darkroom photography. So really old school with film and chemicals and that whole thing, which in itself is quite magical, right? You're capturing light and then you're using these chemicals. It's almost like an alchemical transformation of capturing light and then printing it onto paper. And then I continued to study that in college. But then I also studied sculpture. So, and I was exploring a lot of the concepts behind what it was like to actually have a twin. So like twinship dynamics, but then how that also was reflected out in the world, like a dualistic type of perception of things. And then I also started to explore the five senses in my work. So I would explore the ideas of what it's like to perceive things, and I would translate, do work translating from one sense to another. I can give you a really brief example because that sounds kind of esoteric. I had made a series of conveyor belts, like almost like life-size music boxes that had textures on them. And I would have a vocalist read the textures that I made, read them vocally, so interpret them vocally.
Wow.
And so just playing with translating from one sense to another. So yeah.
Oh my God, that's
fun.
So cool.
Yeah.
And that's amazing that you had that piece ahead of time before you even got into Ayurveda. It's like that is so reinforcing when you like wanted to learn about the senses. That's why your sister, that makes sense, was like, you have to learn about this. They include all the senses too.
Yeah. So the work I do now, I started doing embroidery work. That's like the most recent work I've done, working with the planets, the yantras of planets, because I'm also a Vedic astrologer. So it's been a very fruitful meditation on getting to know the planets by creating these yantras. Wow. So that's the most recent creative work that I've been doing. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I love how you tied it together with Ayurveda and healing. It's really interesting because you mentioned that you were a runner before, and then massage therapy was kind of like, it made sense that you would go into that and that healing science. Where do you feel like your healing journey started to take off when you learned about Ayurveda?
Do you mean my personal healing journey? Yeah, well, for me, I decided to become a mother a little bit later in my years. So I wasn't ready or interested in becoming a mother until I was about 35, 36 or so. And just in terms of my own personal health tendencies, I always had a little bit of difficulty with my cycles. And so I did encounter some difficulties conceiving. And so that was a really good opportunity for me to dive deep into my dinacharya, my daily practices of self-care. Also using a very specific therapy called Uttaravasti that I learned from Maya Tiwari. And so I had to very much practice the things that I was learning and really trust the process and see how that I could support my own body to become into better alignment.
Yeah, definitely. And when you taught me Uttaravasti from your learnings from Maya Tiwari, I mean, that piece has been so pivotal. I too have been healing my menses for a while in my journey. That's how I started with Ayurveda. And yeah, I know that a lot of the women that I come with too, it's a lot of that healing. And it's such a gift that we have some of these techniques to show them. And I, from your recommendations and from Dr. Ryan Strong's recommendations, read Maya Tuari's book, Woman's Power to Heal. Is that what I'm saying?
Yep. Women's Power to Heal, yeah, through inner medicine.
Yeah, it's such a powerful book. Anyone who's listening who hasn't read it and is healing their moon cycle in any way, I highly recommend it. I recommend it to everyone. I'm so curious what that connection was like, meeting Maya Tuari and getting to work with her, and how that all unfolded for you.
Wow, there's a lot to say there. Well, of course, it was a huge gift and a blessing to be able to sit with her for a time. I learned about her through a colleague of mine. She and I would travel. For example, we would travel down to the Ayurvedic Institute to study with Dr. Laud. And then through her own investigations, she learned about Maya Tuari's work and was inspired and asked if I wanted to go with her on retreat to her monastery in North Carolina. And it was a really good time in my life to do that. I was just I was going through a very major transition in my life and needed some time to take pause. And so at the time, Maya Tuari, she was a Brahmini, so a Vedic monk. And she has this beautiful retreat, this beautiful monastery down in North Carolina near the Smoky Mountains. And so it was women we all came together from different parts of the world. And we stayed in various houses nearby and would meet every day and just sit with Maya Tuari for most of the day, at different portions of the day. So sometimes we would all gather and she would speak to us. Sometimes she would teach us a certain therapy, either Uttaravasti or Shirodhara. And at the same time, we were also given different tasks, different acts of service to offer to the monastery to help keep it going, but also to help each other. So food preparation or that kind of thing. And we also had to follow really specific protocols, meaning being very aware and mindful. One example would be it was not appropriate to point your bare feet towards the teacher, towards Mother Maya. And some people might misunderstand that, especially in our culture, as being hierarchical or something like that. But really what it does, it really helps to support the student to be in the moment and to be conscious and to be mindful. So it was a really, really great practice, especially for Westerners to embody. And so she would give each of us different jobs. She gave my friend the job of tending to the gardens, to watering the gardens. She gave me various jobs. She gave me the job of taking photographs. So of course I was really pleased with that. Really felt really honored. And she would sometimes just make comments to us about how to perhaps reconsider something that we were doing or improve something. So it was definitely keeping you on your toes in a good way to make sure that you were paying attention to what you were doing. But it was a joy to be there. She is a goddess in her own right, and she has this true mission to help women, empower women to heal themselves and to heal the earth as well. Yeah. So yeah, so it was a joy. It was 2 weeks, and then at various other locations, there were other places where I would sit with her or take a course or something like that as well.
Was this at the time when you were studying as an Ayurvedic practitioner, or is this from your personal healing perspective?
They all kind of mixed together, but that was more towards the beginning of when I started studying Ayurveda. So that was more towards the beginning part of my education. And of course, when I had started doing more of my own self-healing work as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And for our listeners, I'd love to hear your description of what Uttaravasti is, some of its benefits, and how you've used them. Well, we'll start with that.
So Uttaravasti, it's an it's a very, very old Ayurvedic therapy that essentially helps a woman to align her cycle with the cycle of the moon. And so, of course, there's this understanding in Ayurveda that we are not separate from the rest of the world. We are a part of nature. And when we as individuals can attune ourselves more in more alignment with the cycles of nature, then it helps us to restore our own health, right? We're a reflection of nature. We are a part of nature. So if we can attune, then that's so supportive in helping us to heal. And so essentially that's what Uttara Vasti is. It's a therapy that helps women to attune themselves to nature, specifically the rhythms of how the sunlight reflects off of the moon. And so it's the method of administration is similar to vaginal douching, but it's really meant to support and nourish the womb space. So it's very gentle. It's a very gentle therapy. There's two different ways, two different methods that I teach to women, depending on their needs and what they're familiar with, what they're comfortable with. One is similar to douching, and the other is a simple sitz bath. So there's different ways to actually administer the medicine, the herbal medicine. And oh gosh, it can help with so many things. But like I said before, the fundamental thing is to help align a woman with the cycle of the moon. So to help the woman to align with nature. But it can also help with difficulties with any kinds of symptoms, PMS type symptoms. So if a woman is suffering from painful periods or irritability, or if her menses is too scanty, or if she's missing cycles, it can help nourish and support the return. I also have worked with Uttara Vasti in helping women heal from yeast infections as well. So using a specific formula for that. Yeah, there's many applications for it.
Totally. And that's what I love about the book so much is she lays out a lot of those, and so inspiring to hear all the stories of the woman that she's healed in the process. I think that's so inspiring for women to see what's possible from a technique that really is gentle. And I thought it was so genius too, because when do we really have access of like directly clearing the womb space, and that the whole technique is so beautiful, and it's really a gift to have in that sense.
Absolutely. And it is certainly clearings, because as women, we tend to harbor old hurts of all kinds in our womb space. So not just sexual traumas, all kinds of hurts tend to go to the womb space. So it can help clear that, but also equally importantly is that it's a very nourishing therapy. It's something that's nourishing to us. Yeah, so that's very important to remember.
And I think it is so interesting because I find that it's a lot related to sacral chakra because it's in that region of the body. And like you said, that is where we store a lot of emotions and womb trauma and ancestral trauma that gets passed down. And I think that's why women have a lot of imbalances they're trying to heal often in that area of the body, is because, yeah, we hold on to all those things in those places.
Yeah, we also have to remember too that space, so everyone has Shakti within them, which is the primordial feminine essence. It's our primordial creative force. So everyone has it, men, women, everyone. But we have so much of it because we have this vessel that can hold it. And so when you do Uttara Vasti, it also helps to nourish that. It helps to nourish the Shakti within us. And so we have to remember that as well. Yeah.
What are some of the techniques that you may have learned from Maya and you were able to give to your clients, and what transformations have you noticed with them and using these practices?
Well, so just to go back with the Uttara Vasti practice, that one is certainly one that I use most often. And I notice what I'm noticing overall with my patients that are women is that they begin to become a little bit more established and centered and confident within themselves. And, so I could say, yes, it's helped women have a more balanced cycle. Of course, I've seen that. I have worked with women who have had difficulty conceiving, and after they dedicated themselves I have seen certainly women then be able to conceive after that, after they put in the efforts. And so that's been, you know, really great to see. Gosh, she's taught so many things. I think one of the biggest and most simplest things that she's taught is the practice of taking pause, because it's available to everyone. And it's so simple, but it's really profound. So in order for us to heal ourselves, we have to change our trajectory, meaning we have to change the way we may perceive things or how we think. And that can have such a huge effect on our healing. But how do we do that? We need to actually take a pause in order to shift something. And so if I'm noticing that a patient has a certain pattern within them, a tendency towards reacting to situations with anger or control, and they're suffering in that, and they have a wish to change that, I come up with ways to help them remember to take a pause. So it's very helpful. And that can take a while to get used to that, right? Because you're so used to just being who you are with your tendencies. And so taking a pause, it may be that like, okay, when you feel this anger, the first thing that I want you to do is a certain type of breath. And this is where you're taking the pause. Yeah. So it's very helpful. It's very helpful.
I love that so much, because it helps people to get back to their essence and the truth of who they are, so then they can see from that lens and not the reactive state where they're picking up on old conditionings and maybe projections from what that other person is doing. And like you said, you can't make changes in your body, mind, and spirit without changing the way you actually approach it. And that's why these practices are so beautiful, because it helps you to kind of shape that and shift it. But there also has to be that like extra little piece where you're consciously making the decision to change the way that you do things.
Yes. And I'm very fortunate. I attract a lot of patients that are at that place. Like they're ready to actually take responsibility and then just need some guidance on how to do that. Yes. So that's really important about working with Ayurveda, is to really teach people that they are involved with their healing. It's not someone, you know, of course, I love it when my patients listen to my suggestions, of course, but it is ultimately them. Totally. They're making the decisions, to heal. Yeah.
And you really see that come alive too in clients, is when they spontaneously start to create their own recommendations and start implementing that too. They're like, either they do things in a slightly different way, or they just start noticing, I'll notice this sometimes, like my monthly plan that I'll have for them, they start already doing the recommendations that I had for like month 2 or month 3, just because they've already gotten into that groove of who they are and their truth, that all those other pieces start to fall into place, because you've empowered them, you've given them the tools, which is what Ayurveda is.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah, it's good that you're doing that as well.
I'd love to hear, what is your vision for keeping these practices alive and carrying the legacy of Ayurveda?
Oh gosh, I have so many things that I'm doing. I have a private practice, so I work with patients all the time. And so, of course, that's a simple way of keeping this science and this tradition alive, is keeping the practice going, right? And supporting others in their healing. I also work with students. So I do private mentoring, and I help students who are beginning to work with patients. I help them with their protocols and make sure that everything is supported. And so that's really fun. And then I also do some teaching as well. So I'm working with students and helping them through their curriculum. And that's really great, because right now I'm working with the California College of Ayurveda, doing that work, the master teacher work. And there's students from all over, from all different experience levels. There's a lot of people from the Western medical community that are coming in, psychiatrists and doctors, and it's really great. It's really great because I think integrative medicine can be really supportive, and I hope to see more of that in the future. You know, in our country, I think that could be really great. I also teach classes and workshops. I do have a book that I'm, God willing, trying to finish up. Starting another book. Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And I also, one last thing too, I run a Panchakarma center. And so I have patients that come in from all over and stay on site to do the more intensive therapies.
That's beautiful. And where's your Panchakarma Center located?
So it's in the foothills of Western Massachusetts. So it's in a very rural location. Yeah, people fly into Hartford, Connecticut, and then it's about an hour drive from there.
Awesome.
So it's very secluded. Yeah, very beautiful.
Oh, that sounds so lovely. And I love all those ways that you connect with the healing practices. And you also have your art and getting to do Vedic astrology, which is so cool too.
Yeah, the astrology, that's a newer field, but it works very beautifully because it helps me to understand the deeper patterns that my patients are dealing with. It's been very helpful to have that. And also for people who aren't necessarily ready at first to work Ayurvedically, they may just decide to do a chart reading to get a little more insight and guidance towards things that are happening in their lives or things that they're thinking about that they would like some clarity and support with. So that's been really great.
Yeah, I love that. Where can our audience, other than going to your beautiful Panchakarma Center in secluded Massachusetts, where can they find and work with you?
So people are welcome to go to my website. It's my first name and last initial. It's CHELYNNT.com. And there's information on if anyone wants to book a session or has a question and wants to send me an email. That's the way that they can contact me. I do have an Instagram. It's Lotus Chelynn. It's LOTUS. And then Chelynn, CHELYNN. So you can follow me on Instagram as well.
I love that. Thank you. We're going to put that link in the show notes so everyone can book their sessions and get to know your work even more. And I'm just so grateful to have your wisdom on here and presence on our podcast. We get a lot of Ayurvedic practitioners who listen to our podcast too. So I know they're going to love this episode. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome, everyone. I hope you have a blessed rest of your day and we'll see you next time.